Moving on to the next one by Elizabeth Jeans, Radiation Oncology Deliberative Curriculum Inquiry, Feasibility of a National Delphi Process.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. Wonderful to see so many familiar faces today. For those that don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Jeans, and on behalf of the Leadership Committee for the ROECSG Core Curriculum Project, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a PGY4 at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. I serve as the co-lead for this project alongside Dan Golden. I'm also the resident representative on the ROECSG board and the former ARO Vice Chair and Chair of the Education Subcommittee. Let's see. All right, so just to start with an overview, when designing curriculum, a top-down process is utilized, which allows for the building on ideas and concepts and ensuring adequate selection of materials and assessment that mirror the curricular framework and objects. Our field over time has focused on the development of curricular content and assessment without a clear overseen structure, which has led in difficulty in residents knowing exactly what to study and in educators knowing exactly what to teach. So from that concept, the nidus of this project was born, and we had a couple purposes. The first one is that to develop a curriculum will allow us to guide resident education and qualifying examinations. We can also use competence-based training, including entrustable professional activities, to provide an outcomes-based approach to modernize the graduate medical education. And we can use a deliberative inquiry-based method, the Delphi method, in order to reach this consensus. So not to elaborate too long on the Delphi, I'm sure many are aware of this process as it's used outside of just the educational deliberative inquiry. But the Delphi process was originally created in the 1950s by the RAND Corporation, and it refers to the Oracle of Delphi, who was a priestess at a temple in Apollo, and she was known for her prophecies. So it allows experts to work toward a mutual agreement by conducting a circulating series of questionnaires and seeks to aggregate opinions from a diverse set of experts without having to bring everyone together for a physical meeting. So for this project, an initial list of EPAs and content domains were determined by the leadership committee of this project. These subsequently underwent 2 rounds of refinement, resulting in a final list of EPAs, a final list of content domains, as well as consensus on percent weighting of curricular content domains, and for a single content domain, subdomains, and percent time allocated. In order to discuss this a little bit further, we just have to briefly touch on what an EPA is, or an entrustable professional activity. So an entrustable professional activity is a unit of professional practice that constitutes what clinicians do as daily work. So they're key tasks of a discipline that an individual can be trusted to perform in a given healthcare context. And this is a common approach in the competence by medical education design around the world. Milestones, which we currently use, are observable markers of one's ability. And so the key difference here is that EPAs are tasks or activities that must be accomplished, while milestones are abilities of an individual. So in this figure, this comes from a paper, Taylor et al. In the Annals of Internal Medicine, which looks at basically using EPAs to redesign the traditional training model. And so by doing this, you can use a competence by design training model where you allow residents to progress or be promoted based upon their ability to complete entrustable professional activities. And so here TD stands for transition to discipline, FD foundations of discipline, CD core of discipline, and TP transition to practice. I just wanted to pull out one example from the internal medicine-based EPA. So for foundations of discipline, they say assessing, diagnosing, and providing initial management for patients with common acute medical presentations in acute care settings. And they developed this entrustment scale, which allows you to further say where your residents are on being able to accomplish this entrustable professional activity and how you entrust them or at what level. So this is the Core Curriculum Leadership Committee. So as you can see, we brought together a group of people that represent key stakeholders, as well as we wanted to make sure we represented private practitioners and radiobiologists, as well as physicists. And we also had a medical education expert. We did seek formal project endorsement by the ASTRO Board of Directors, SCAREP, ADROP, as well as ARO. So for the Delphi, I'll show you the initial participants. Our recruitment process included advertising through the Aerogram, SCAREP newsletter, Chetty, ADROP newsletter, direct contacts, RO Hub, and Twitter. We had 186 people sign up and 114 complete the first Delphi. You can see we had a wide range of different experts within the field. We also had leadership across all organizations, as well as institutional leadership and ABR board members, ABR writers, oral board examiners, and in-service examiners. For the second Delphi, we invited everybody that completed the first Delphi. And so we had 114 people that were invited and 77 which completed. We had not collected race or ethnicity on the initial Delphi, and so we did collect that on the second Delphi as follows. So these are the key results. So from the Delphi process, we were able to reach consensus on 7 content domains, as well as % time allocated to curricular hours. As you can see here, there are obviously content domains which we would easily think of, and then there are additional content domains that are commonly in the null curriculum, which are being kind of brought to the forelight. Additionally, we did break down applied science further into 4 main subdomains, which met consensus and the % time allocated within those subdomains of the overall content domain of applied sciences. For entrustable professional activities and competence by design, we had 52 final EPAs which met consensus, and they broke down into the competence by design model as follow. So 7 in transition to discipline, 11 foundations of discipline, 24 core of discipline, and 10 transition to practice. Just want to provide an example of the radiation oncology entrustable professional activities. So we'll look at this one, core of discipline. So an example that met consensus was reviewing onboard and offline imaging and recommending appropriate patient shifts. And so you can use this entrustable professional activity for your residents and use the entrustment scale and note where they are exactly with mastering this entrustable professional activity, and then design curricular content to help educate residents further. So from this project, we know that we can use this deliberative curriculum inquiry to reach consensus. We were able to successfully recruit multiple stakeholders. We should continue to improve diversity of our participants as we do future iterations of the Delphi. We do plan on opening this for a public commentary after Astro, and we also will ask for formal endorsement of the results by stakeholder groups. There are further projects that do need to be completed from this. We need subsequent Delphis for content domains and subdomains to further tease out exactly what should be included in each of those content domains and subdomains. Additionally, we would like to develop an EPA guidebook and assessment tool to help residency programs and residents continue to use these to develop their skills. So from this project, we were able to reach consensus on US radiation oncology content domains and subdomains, as well as EPAs. Our hope is that these will help to guide educational curricular structure and time spent in training programs, and additionally to help inform weighting for qualifying examinations moving forward. So with that, I would like to thank the leadership committee, as well as everybody that participated in the Delphi, many of people who are on this call. And with that, I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Fantastic piece of work here, Elizabeth and team. Clearly something which has been discussed in ROECSG and other forums over a couple of years now, so it's great to see this process coming to fruition. I'll start with a quick question about identification of the domains. So I think one of the things about that is often raised about the Delphi process is that it's the initial identification of domains which is kind of important, because if it's not in the list, then it may never sort of be appropriately scrutinized. So how was that identified in the first instance? So
I think you're asking a little bit about the process to identify the content domains, yes. How we went about that. Okay. So we met with the leadership committee and initially came to a consensus just based upon our group as to what we thought were most pertinent content domains. We then, when we submitted the first Delphi to the participants, we basically asked a couple of questions, basically on the Likert scale, whether or not they think this should be included or not included. And then anything that met one standard deviation below the median for % of inclusion, which was basically a 4 or above, underwent further revisions. We also asked for further guidance on clarity, so whether or not this content domain met clarity or if there were any improved wording suggestions. And then we took all that information and came together as a group with the leadership committee and discussed it and made further refinements for the second Delphi. The other thing that we did was we asked for all participants to suggest additional content domains that they thought may not be included already in the submitted material, and then came together as a leadership committee and reviewed those to see whether or not those were already inclusive within another subdomain. So for example, there were a few suggestions that we should consider dosimetry, but after conversation, we really felt like that was inclusive within the radiation physics subdomain within applied sciences, as well as should be brought to the forefront within clinical oncology. So that was our process.
Very thorough. Thank you. Christian, did you have any questions or anyone else on the floor?
I don't have a question but as much as a comment as any good conference needs to have. They say assessment is the tail that wags the curriculum dog. I think this project will have far-reaching implications, specifically for shaping how future programs will teach their residents or instruct upon them, because they'll now have a framework in much more detail than just the 6 core competencies of ACGME. So, great job on this. I'm looking forward to seeing it go forward. And, I think there was comments on if we can get more private practice in there. We'll continue working on it.
There was one question actually from Simon Duke.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, about how this relates to the ESTRO curriculum, which had a similar aims and process. I don't know, Liz, if you want to address that?
Excellent question. Unfortunately, I'm not super well versed in the ESTRO core curriculum, but I do think there are a lot of parallels across the two in regards to kind of methodology as well as outcomes. So, we aimed for this initial project to look specifically at US radiation oncology trainees in the case that there may be differences across, various countries, but I do think there are a lot of parallels, so.
And I'll chip in quickly that obviously there's also an Australian curriculum that exists. Right. Wasn't constructed through Delphi, but through expert consensus. And so another one which is worth being in the picture. And Canadian, someone's chipped in. So international curriculums which do exist and worth review as well. So, but look, this is a really fantastic piece of work. And one last question I'll ask, and this might be for Dan, but is there any sort of already has there already been a sort of pre-agreement that this curriculum or the outcomes of this particular project will be, adopted at the level? What's the sort of discussions that are happening there?
Yeah.
Liz can answer. Yeah.
Yep. So we have had conversations extensively with Astro, with Aero, with Scarab, kind of all the overseeing, as well as the ABR, which was heavily involved within this project. As of now, the way that it stands is that we did get endorsement to complete the project, but we will have to further undergo additional conversations as to whether or not the project results will be endorsed and how they can be integrated. If you look kind of over the history of the past couple of years from the political spectrum, it's become very clear that the ABR and Astro are looking for these types of results, but do not personally perhaps find their leadership organizations the ones to complete this project. So we are very hopeful that because now this project has been done and has been done with rigorous, educational methodology, that hopefully it will be formally endorsed and used.
Yep, a comment that it's clearly in great hands, which I fully agree with. So thank you for that presentation. Thank you everyone for a fantastic session. Christian, any other final comments? Oh, muted. Yes, that's a constant thing we've had to work against.
No other comments. I agree with you. Great session. I've been here since the first ROECSG, and I've really noticed the evolution of the projects, the quality of the projects, the depth, and how much more solid of a foundation. It's great to see a field of study within radiation oncology grow and mature.